On March 17, 2017, a 29-year-old woman was found dead with 7 gunshot wounds in a small house outside Pinecrest. Eliza Barrett had been looking forward to starting her new life with her fiancé. She had just begun arranging furniture in what would become their home. And moments later, she was discovered murdered. As investigators pieced together the scene, they uncovered a devastating truth. The person responsible wasn't a stranger, but the very one who should have welcomed her into the family, her future father-in-law. The cold wind swept through Pinecrest, a town where everyone knew each other's business. Nathan Wells stood on his deck, working the grill with the same care he gave to his building projects. His rough hands, hardened by 30 years of construction work, turned the burgers with expert skill. Across the yard, his son Connor stood with his arm around his fiancée, Eliza Barrett. Connor was 26 now, tall like his father but with the gentle eyes of his late mother. Eliza's reddish-brown hair caught the weak winter sunlight as she laughed with guests. For 2 years, she had been part of their lives, her quiet intelligence and warm smile winning over most people in Pinecrest. Frank Delaney, Nathan's oldest friend, approached the grill. He mentioned how Connor's mother Catherine would have loved to see this day. Nathan felt a tightness in his jaw. 10 years had passed since the icy road had taken her from them, but the pain still felt fresh whenever someone mentioned her. The engagement party had been Connor's idea, a simple backyard gathering to announce their October wedding date. Nathan had agreed, though something about the whole situation had been bothering him for weeks. Frank asked if they could talk privately. The serious tone in his voice sent a chill through Nathan. They walked to Nathan's workshop at the edge of the property, away from the celebration. Standing among the sawdust and unfinished furniture, Frank shifted nervously. He said his nephew, who worked at Riverdale Memorial Hospital, had recognized Eliza's name when Frank mentioned Connor's engagement. Nathan frowned, not understanding the problem. They already knew Eliza was from Riverdale. Frank lowered his voice and said she wasn't Eliza back then. She was Ethan Barrett. The words hung heavily in the workshop. Nathan felt a ringing in his ears as his mind tried to make sense of what Frank was suggesting. Frank explained that Eliza was transgender. His nephew said there were records, old yearbooks, and people who remembered her from before. Nathan's hands tightened into fists. He said the idea was ridiculous. He had known Eliza for 2 years, and Connor had been with her even longer. A knock at the door interrupted them. Connor appeared, his face flushed with happiness, saying the burgers were burning. Nathan said he would be right there. As Connor left, Frank apologized for bringing this up during the celebration but said Nathan was his oldest friend, and he couldn't keep it to himself. The rest of the party passed in a blur. Nathan found himself watching Eliza differently, studying her height, her hands, the shape of her jaw, looking for any sign that Frank's claim might be true. When she laughed, he wondered if there was something masculine about her throat. When she helped Connor's elderly aunt to her car, he questioned if there was unusual strength in her slender arms. Or was he seeing things that weren't there? As the last guests left and Connor prepared to drive Eliza home, Nathan hugged his future daughter-in-law stiffly. She thanked him for the party, saying it meant a lot to both of them. Nathan told her to call him by his first name, the same thing he had been telling her for almost 2 years. After they left, Nathan moved through the empty house like a ghost. He cleaned up while Frank's words echoed in his mind. She wasn't Eliza then. She was Ethan Barrett. At midnight, Nathan sat in his dark living room, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him. Above the fireplace, Catherine smiled from their wedding photo. What would she think of all this? Catherine, with her traditional values and fierce love for their son? Sleep avoided Nathan that night. He tossed and turned, his mind racing through every interaction he'd ever had with Eliza. Every conversation. Every holiday meal. Every moment she'd spent with Connor. Had there been signs he missed? Had Connor been keeping this from him? Or was Frank completely wrong? By morning, Nathan had made a decision. He wouldn't confront Connor yet. That conversation would come later, if needed. First, he needed to know the truth for himself. He needed proof. As the first light of day crept across his bedroom ceiling, Nathan checked his calendar. He had a client meeting in Westbrook later that week. Riverdale wasn't far from there. Just a small detour to settle this once and for all. One way or another, he would find out who Eliza Barrett really was. The morning sun glinted off Nathan's truck as he pulled onto the highway toward Westbrook. His client meeting wasn't until 2 that afternoon, giving him plenty of time for the detour to Riverdale. He told himself this was necessary, a father's duty to protect his son from deception. But as the miles rolled by, a small voice in the back of his mind questioned his true motives. The drive to Riverdale took just under an hour. The town was larger than Pinecrest but still maintained that small-town feeling. The kind of place where everyone grew up knowing everyone else's business. Nathan drove slowly down Main Street, taking in the modest storefronts, the courthouse with its weathered stone steps, the high school in the distance. This was where Eliza had grown up, where she had been someone else. Nathan parked his truck outside the Riverdale Public Library, an old brick building with high windows. He sat for several minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel. Part of him wanted to turn around, to drive back to Pinecrest and forget this whole thing. Maybe it would be better not to know. But the thought of Connor married to someone who had hidden the truth, it was too much to ignore. Inside, the library smelled of old books and floor polish. A middle-aged woman with gray-streaked hair sat at the front desk, typing slowly on an outdated computer. Nathan forced a casual smile and approached. He explained that he was researching local families for a historical project and needed to see Riverdale High School yearbooks from 2006 to 2010. The librarian seemed pleased by his interest. She led him to a back room where yearbooks were stored on metal shelves, organized by year. Nathan thanked her, and she left him alone with the books. His hands felt strangely heavy as he pulled down the yearbooks. He started with 2010, the year Eliza would have graduated if Frank's timeline was correct. The pages felt slick beneath his fingers as he flipped through the senior portraits. Barrett. There was no Ethan Barrett among the seniors. Nathan worked backward. 2009. Nothing. 2008. Nothing. By the time he reached 2006, a small part of him hoped Frank had been wrong, that this was all a misunderstanding or a cruel joke. Then he found it. Freshman class, arranged alphabetically. Barrett, Ethan. Nathan's breath caught in his throat. The face looking back at him from the page was younger, with shorter hair and more angular features, but unmistakably familiar. The same wide-set eyes. The same curve of the jaw. The same slight, nervous smile that appeared when Eliza was uncomfortable. His stomach twisted as he stared at the image. It wasn't a lie. It wasn't a rumor. The person his son wanted to marry had once been Ethan Barrett. Nathan flipped through the yearbook, finding more photos. Ethan in the science club, standing awkwardly at the edge of a group. Ethan receiving an academic award, looking uncomfortable in an ill-fitting suit. Each image felt like another blow. He didn't know how long he sat there, the yearbook open on the table, the evidence staring back at him. The library seemed to close in around him, the air suddenly too thick to breathe. Nathan slammed the book shut and placed it back on the shelf with shaking hands. Outside, the afternoon sun felt harsh and revealing. Nathan climbed into his truck and sat there, his mind racing. He had just enough time to make his client meeting in Westbrook, but he couldn't focus on business now. He called to reschedule, claiming a family emergency. In a way, it wasn't a lie. The drive back to Pinecrest was a blur of asphalt and churning thoughts. Nathan's mind filled with images of Eliza at family dinners, helping Catherine's mother at Christmas, laughing with Connor on the deck. All that time, she had been keeping this secret. Or had it been a secret at all? The question hit Nathan like a physical blow. Did Connor know? Had his son knowingly brought this person into their lives without telling him the truth? By the time Nathan pulled into his driveway, the sun was setting. The house was dark and empty. Connor was probably at Eliza's apartment, or at the new house they were preparing to move into together. The house Nathan had helped them find. Nathan poured himself a glass of whiskey and drank it quickly, then poured another. The alcohol burned his throat but did nothing to quiet his mind. He pulled out his phone and stared at Connor's number for a long moment before typing a text. Need to talk. Important. Can you come by? Connor's reply came quickly, at Eliza's. Can it wait until tomorrow? Nathan felt his jaw tighten. Family matter. Rather discuss in person. 20 minutes later, Connor's car pulled into the driveway. Nathan watched from the window as his son jogged up the front steps. He looked happy, carefree, oblivious to the storm brewing inside his father. Connor found Nathan in the living room, still nursing his whiskey. His son's concerned expression quickly shifted to alarm when he saw the look on Nathan's face. Without preamble, Nathan asked if Connor knew about Eliza. About who she used to be. The color drained from Connor's face, then returned in a flush of anger. Of course he knew, Connor said. Eliza had told him early in their relationship. It didn't matter to him. It wasn't a secret, just private. Nathan felt the betrayal like a knife to his gut. His own son had known all along and had kept him in the dark. He asked why Connor hadn't told him the truth. Connor's voice grew hard. He said it wasn't his truth to tell. Eliza was a woman. She had always felt like a woman. Her past was her business, and she had shared it with Connor because she loved and trusted him. Connor had accepted her because that's what people do when they love someone. Nathan listened, the rage building inside him with each word. Connor didn't understand. This wasn't just about Eliza. This was about honesty, about family, about the values Catherine had instilled in them both. Connor left soon after, his disappointment in his father evident in every movement. He asked Nathan to keep this conversation between them. Eliza would be devastated to know Nathan had gone digging into her past. Alone again, Nathan paced the house like a caged animal. The whiskey was gone now, but the clarity it had briefly provided faded into a murky certainty. Connor was blinded by whatever feelings he had for Eliza. He couldn't see the deception. As Nathan climbed the stairs to his bedroom, a decision crystallized in his mind. He wouldn't confront Connor again. His son was too far gone in this delusion. Instead, he would talk to Eliza directly. Look her in the eyes. Make her understand what she was doing to his family. Tomorrow, he would invite her to meet him alone. And then, one way or another, this would end. The next morning, Nathan sent a text to Eliza asking to meet at Molly's diner to discuss wedding plans. She accepted immediately, suggesting they meet at noon. Her eagerness to please only deepened his resentment. Molly's diner sat at the edge of Pinecrest, a faded green building that had served the same greasy food for 30 years. Nathan arrived early and chose a corner booth away from the few other customers. The vinyl seat creaked as he settled in, ordering black coffee from a waitress who had known him since high school. His hands felt cold despite the warm mug between them. 10 minutes later, Eliza walked in. She wore a simple blue sweater and jeans, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She smiled when she spotted him, genuine warmth in her eyes. Nathan forced himself to return the smile, though it felt like stretching a mask over his true feelings. Eliza slid into the booth across from him, thanking him for suggesting the meeting. She seemed slightly nervous but happy, completely unaware of what was coming. The waitress returned, and Eliza ordered tea. She made small talk about the weather, about how excited Connor was for their new house. Nathan barely heard her. He was looking at her face, searching for traces of Eliza Barrett in her features. When the waitress moved away, Nathan leaned forward slightly. He kept his voice low, controlled. He needed to understand something, he told her. About her past. Eliza's smile faltered. Something in Nathan's tone had alerted her. She asked what he meant, though her eyes showed she already knew. Nathan didn't blink. He knew about Riverdale, he said. About who she was before. About Ethan. The color drained from Eliza's face. The teacup rattled slightly as she set it down. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Eliza took a deep breath. Yes, she was assigned male at birth, she admitted. She had known since childhood that her body didn't match who she truly was. She had transitioned years ago, before she ever met Connor. And Connor knew, she had told him during their first months together. Nathan's face remained emotionless, but inside, rage burned hotter with each word she spoke. The calm, matter-of-fact way she discussed deceiving his family made his skin crawl. Eliza leaned forward, her eyes pleading. She understood this might be difficult for Nathan to process. But she loved Connor more than anything. She had never lied to him, and she wasn't lying now. This wasn't deception. It was just her life. Nathan asked if she understood what she was doing to his family, to Connor's future, to the Wells name. Eliza's expression shifted from concern to a hint of anger. She wasn't doing anything to his family except trying to become part of it. Connor loved her for who she was. Their future together was bright. She wasn't taking anything from the Wells name. She was hoping to share it, to honor it. Something in her confidence infuriated Nathan further. He asked about children. Didn't Connor deserve a real family? Eliza's hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. They had discussed adoption. There were many ways to build a family. Love mattered more than biology. Nathan's jaw tightened. Easy words for someone living a lie. Eliza sat straighter. She wasn't living a lie. She was living her truth, something that had taken tremendous courage. She had hoped Nathan could try to understand, if not for her sake, then for Connor's. The conversation continued, growing more tense with each exchange. Nathan maintained his cold composure while Eliza alternated between patient explanation and frustrated defense. Neither moved an inch toward understanding. Finally, Eliza placed her hands flat on the table. She loved Connor, she said again. Nothing would change that. She had hoped to have Nathan's blessing, but they would move forward either way. Connor was an adult capable of making his own choices. Nathan stood abruptly. He had heard enough. Without another word, he threw cash on the table and walked out, leaving Eliza alone in the booth, her tea untouched and cold. The next 3 days passed in a fog of rage for Nathan. He avoided Connor's calls, claiming work emergencies. At night, he sat alone in his living room, the lights off, replaying the conversation with Eliza over and over. Each time, his anger grew. What infuriated him most wasn't just the deception, but Eliza's complete lack of shame. She acted as if what she was doing was normal, as if Nathan was the one with the problem. And Connor, his own son, had chosen her over his family's values. On the second night, Nathan pulled out the family photo albums. He flipped through pictures of Connor growing up, playing baseball, graduating high school, working his first construction job on Nathan's crew. The boy in those photos was supposed to have a normal life. A wife, children, a legacy to carry on after Nathan was gone. Eliza had stolen that future. She had corrupted Connor, turned him against everything Catherine would have wanted for him. By the third day, Nathan stopped answering his phone altogether. The construction company could run itself for a while. He had more important concerns. Catherine's voice seemed to whisper to him from the walls of their home, "Protect the family. Protect our son." That afternoon, Connor showed up at the house, pounding on the door until Nathan finally opened it. His son looked tired, worried. He asked what was going on, why Nathan was avoiding him. Nathan couldn't bring himself to have another argument. He lied, saying he was coming to terms with things, that he needed time. He would be fine. Connor shouldn't worry. The relief on Connor's face made Nathan's stomach turn. His son wanted so badly to believe everything would be okay. Connor hugged him awkwardly before leaving, saying he and Eliza would be spending the weekend at their new house, painting and setting up furniture. They would be alone, just the two of them. Nathan should come by when he felt ready. After Connor left, Nathan sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. The solution had presented itself so simply, so clearly. Connor would be busy in town. Eliza would be alone at the house. The isolated house Nathan had helped them find. That night, Nathan dreamed of Catherine. She stood in their bedroom, just as she had the morning before the accident. In the dream, she touched his face and nodded slowly. He knew what she would want him to do. The next morning, Nathan opened the gun safe in his garage. The handgun had been there for years, rarely used except for occasional target practice. He cleaned it methodically, wiping each part with careful precision. His mind felt oddly peaceful, as if the decision had cleared away all confusion. This wasn't about hatred, he told himself. This was about protection. About restoring order. About saving his son from a life built on lies. Nathan loaded the gun with steady hands. He would take a box to the house tomorrow, ostensibly to help with the move. Inside the box, beneath some kitchen items, the gun would wait until the right moment. As darkness fell outside, Nathan placed the loaded weapon in a drawer and closed it quietly. Tomorrow would change everything. Tomorrow, he would restore his family to what it should be. In his mind, it wasn't murder. It was correction. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear. Nathan loaded his truck with the cardboard box containing kitchen items and, beneath them, the loaded handgun. He drove the familiar route to the outskirts of Pinecrest where Connor and Eliza's new home waited. A modest white farmhouse set back from the road, surrounded by empty fields. No neighbors for half a mile in any direction. No witnesses. Connor's truck was already parked in the gravel driveway. Nathan pulled up beside it, taking a deep breath before stepping out. The box felt heavier than it should as he carried it toward the front door, which stood open to the spring air. Inside, the house buzzed with the energy of new beginnings. Moving boxes were stacked in every corner. Half-assembled furniture cluttered the living room. Paint cans lined one wall, ready to transform the space. Connor emerged from the kitchen, his t-shirt already stained with sweat. He seemed surprised but pleased to see his father. Nathan forced a smile, explaining he thought they could use an extra pair of hands. The box contained some kitchen items Catherine had saved, dishes they might want to use in their new home. Connor's face softened at the mention of his mother. He called to Eliza, who appeared from the back bedroom. Her hair was tied up in a bandana, a smudge of paint on her cheek. Her smile faltered slightly when she saw Nathan, but she recovered quickly, thanking him for coming. Nathan placed the box on the kitchen counter. He kept his voice casual as he asked about their plans for the day. Connor explained they needed to finish assembling the furniture and painting the main bedroom. They also needed to pick up more supplies from town, paint rollers, light bulbs, a few groceries. Nathan nodded, offering to help Eliza finish putting together the bookshelf in the living room while Connor made the supply run. It would save time, he suggested. Connor agreed without hesitation, grateful for the assistance. He grabbed his keys and wallet, promising to be back in 30 minutes. Nathan watched from the porch as Connor's truck disappeared down the long driveway, dust billowing behind it. The house fell quiet except for the distant call of birds and Eliza's movements in the living room. He stood there for a long moment, breathing steadily, feeling oddly calm. When he returned inside, Eliza was kneeling on the floor, sorting through the pieces of a half-assembled bookshelf. She looked up and smiled tentatively. She was glad he had come today, she said. It meant a lot to Connor. Nathan didn't reply. He moved to the box he had brought, lifting out a stack of plates and setting them on the counter. Beneath them, the gun waited. Eliza continued working on the bookshelf, the awkward silence broken only by the sound of wood against wood. She attempted small talk, asking about Nathan's work, mentioning how perfect the house was, thanking him for helping them find it. Her voice seemed to come from very far away. Nathan's hand closed around the grip of the handgun. The metal felt cool and solid, grounding him in the moment. With methodical calm, he lifted it from the box. Eliza turned at that moment, perhaps sensing the shift in the air. Her eyes widened when she saw the gun. She rose slowly, confusion and fear washing over her face. She asked what he was doing, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan said nothing. In his mind, the voice that had been whispering for days now shouted, "Protect the family. Restore order. Protect Connor from this deception." Eliza took a step backward, her hands rising instinctively in front of her. She asked him to put the gun down. They could talk about this. Whatever was wrong, they could work it out. Nathan raised the weapon, his arm steady, his eyes cold. This wasn't hatred, he told himself again. This was necessity. Eliza backed into the bookshelf, knocking pieces to the floor. She pleaded with him. She loved Connor. Connor loved her. Please, please don't do this. The first shot cracked through the house like thunder. Eliza's shoulder exploded in red as she stumbled backward against the wall. Her scream filled the small room, a sound of pure terror and pain. Nathan fired again. And again. And again. Each shot punctuated by the recoil in his wrist, each echo bouncing off the bare walls of what should have been a home filled with love. By the seventh shot, Eliza had collapsed near the window, her body unnaturally still. Blood pooled beneath her, soaking into the unfinished wood floors. The smell of gunpowder filled the room, sharp and acrid. Nathan stood motionless, the gun hanging at his side. The ringing in his ears from the gunshots slowly faded, replaced by an eerie silence. Eliza's eyes stared at nothing, her final expression frozen in disbelief and pleading. Only then did Nathan hear it. Sirens in the distance, growing louder. Someone must have heard the shots. Perhaps a hiker or a farmer in the distant fields. The rural police station was less than 3 miles away. Nathan made no attempt to run. He simply dropped the gun on the floor and waited. The sirens grew louder, more insistent. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows, reflecting against the walls like a grotesque light show. The first deputy burst through the door, weapon drawn. Nathan raised his hands above his head, his face blank. Blood splattered his clothes in a spray pattern of guilt and consequence. The deputy shouted commands, telling him to step away from the weapon. Nathan obeyed mechanically, moving back as a second officer rushed to Eliza's side, checking for a pulse that wasn't there. Outside, another police car arrived. Neighbors from distant properties had begun to gather along the road, drawn by the commotion. Nathan allowed himself to be handcuffed without resistance. The metal clicked around his wrists, cold and final. But he felt nothing, no remorse, no fear, no doubt. In his mind, he had done what was necessary. As the officers led him toward the police car, a cloud of dust appeared on the horizon. Connor's truck was returning, racing down the gravel drive much too fast. Connor skidded to a halt behind the police cars, supplies forgotten in the passenger seat. He leapt from the truck, his face a mask of confusion and fear. Officers tried to intercept him, but he pushed past them, running toward the house. A deputy caught him at the door, physically restraining him. Through the open doorway, Connor could see the blood, the still form on the floor, the abandoned gun. No! The scream tore from Connor's throat, primal and wounded. No, no, no! He fought against the deputy's hold, tears streaming down his face. Eliza! Where is she? What happened? Then his eyes found Nathan, being led to the police car in handcuffs. Their gazes locked across the yard, father and son, connected by blood but now separated by blood as well. In that moment, understanding dawned on Connor's face. Not just grief, but comprehension. Horror. Betrayal in its purest form. Nathan's expression never changed. He allowed the officers to guide him into the back seat of the cruiser, his eyes still fixed on his son. What Connor saw there wasn't remorse or regret, only the cold certainty of righteous action. As the car door closed, separating them, Connor collapsed to his knees in the gravel. The world he had known, the father he had trusted, the future he had planned, all shattered in an instant, as final and irreparable as the 7 bullets that had torn through Eliza's body. The Pinecrest County Courthouse stood like a stone guardian over the town square. 3 months after Eliza's murder, its halls filled with reporters and spectators as Nathan Wells' trial began. Prosecutor Rebecca Chen, a sharp-eyed woman known for her unwavering pursuit of justice, met with Connor in a small conference room the morning of opening statements. Rebecca explained the process again, what Connor could expect, how his testimony would be vital. Nathan had admitted to the shooting but claimed diminished capacity, a defense strategy that infuriated Rebecca. The evidence was overwhelming, she assured Connor. 7 shots wasn't a moment of confusion. It was execution. Connor hardly heard her. The past 3 months had been a fog of grief and arrangements. Eliza's funeral, police interviews, the sale of the house they would never live in together. Each day, he woke expecting to find her beside him, only to remember all over again. The hardest part wasn't the loss. It was knowing his own father had taken her away. Inside the courtroom, Nathan sat at the defense table in a dark suit, his face unreadable. His attorney, Victor Grant, leaned close, whispering strategies. Connor couldn't bear to look at his father for more than a few seconds. The man at that table was a stranger wearing his father's face. Rebecca's opening statement was precise and damning. She walked the jury through Nathan's actions. The discovery of Eliza's past, the investigation, the planning, the execution. This wasn't a crime of passion, she emphasized. It was premeditated murder born of prejudice and control. Victor Grant countered with a portrait of Nathan as a confused, protective father who had suffered a momentary break from reality. He spoke of Nathan's decades of community service, his reputation as an honest businessman, the trauma of losing his wife. He asked the jury to consider the full measure of the man, not just his worst moment. The trial stretched across 5 days. Evidence mounted, the murder weapon, Nathan's fingerprints, the box he had used to conceal it. But the most powerful testimony came from Connor himself. On the witness stand, Connor's voice wavered as he described finding Eliza's body, seeing his father in handcuffs. Rebecca gently led him through his relationship with Eliza, how she had always been honest with him about her past, how they had planned their future together. When asked what that future would have been, Connor broke down. Their house, their planned adoption, the life they had mapped out together, all destroyed in minutes. Victor's cross-examination was respectful but probing. Had Connor considered how his father might feel? Had he understood Nathan's traditional values? Connor's answers were raw with anger. His father's values didn't justify murder. Nothing could. Throughout it all, Nathan showed no emotion. He sat straight-backed, eyes forward, as if watching something happening to someone else. The jury deliberated for just 6 hours before returning their verdict. Guilty of first-degree murder. The judge, citing the brutal nature of the crime and Nathan's complete lack of remorse, sentenced him to life in prison without possibility of parole. As the sentence was read, Connor watched his father's face for any sign of regret or understanding. There was none. Even now, Nathan seemed to believe he had done the right thing. Outside the courthouse after the verdict, reporters clustered on the steps, cameras flashing. Connor pushed past them without comment, walking alone to the small park across the street. He sat on a bench, physically and emotionally exhausted. From his pocket, he withdrew Eliza's engagement ring, retrieved from police evidence after the trial. The diamond caught the afternoon sunlight, a small flash of brightness in his darkened world. Justice had been served, but it felt hollow. No verdict could bring Eliza back. No sentence could repair the family destroyed by hatred disguised as protection. Nathan would spend the rest of his life in prison, and Connor would spend his learning to live with the empty space Eliza had left behind. As the sun began to set, Connor stood and slipped the ring back into his pocket. He would never get to see the future they had planned unfold. There would be no wedding, no quiet evenings in their little house, no children to raise together. But he would carry her memory forward, and in that, there was some small measure of peace. Connor walked away from the courthouse, from the cameras, from the whispers, away from the life he had once thought was unshakable. Ahead of him stretched a road he had never wanted to travel, but he would walk it anyway, for Eliza, for himself, and for the truth that had cost them both so much.